Hello, I'm Clint Walker, and this is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. And today we're going to be talking about a few different types of appraisals that I want you to know are available to you outside of appraisals for lending work and pre-listing purposes, which I think I talk about a lot. A few other common types of appraisals that I get called about by agents on behalf of their clients, or a few different other type of clients, would be appraisals for situations like a divorce or an estate settlement, or some other type of legal proceeding. Or I've had a few where they're just asset valuations for people that have a lot of their net worth in real estate and want to be able to manage their financial picture. And what are a few other sort of outside the box ones that agents get called about by? A lot of times agents get called about these situations by past clients, which is why I want you to know that they're available. But most often it is a divorce situation, or there's been a death of one of the property owners, and they need to have an appraisal for tax purposes or estate settlement. So, if someone calls you for one of these things, yes, you need to call an appraisal, connect them with an appraiser. They will likely be the client themselves, and you'll be sort of out of the picture at that point. But it is a really nice level of service to have you as a connection to get that done. And a lot of times, just for your information, what your folks will be needing is an appraisal that is based on a date in the past, and we call that a retrospective appraisal. You might hear it referred to as a date of death appraisal if that's the situation, there's been a death. But technically in appraising we call it a retrospective, where we are going back to a past date and we are appraising the property as of that date. So it's pretty interesting. The process is interesting because I actually just this morning completed completed one that went back further than I've ever gone before, almost 20 years in the past. And in that particular one, that they needed a date as of today, and they needed a date as of almost 20 years ago, so that they could see what the appreciation was from then until now. And it was really fascinating to go back that far, because a lot of the data is still in our MLS. If you're watching this in an area that's got an MLS other than RealTracs, your mileage may vary. But RealTracs goes back a long way. They remove a lot of the old photos. You really just have the thumbnail of the front of the house left there. But so it takes some more digging and more research to find out conditions and things like that about the property, little details about the property. But it was really fascinating, and one of the really fascinating things about that one was going back that far made what is now sort of an oldish property. If you go back 20 years, it's almost a new property. And so, whereas right now, because of certain factors, I might not do the cost approach, which is where we recreate the cost of building a similar property. When I take 20 years off of the age, it becomes maybe appropriate to do the cost approach. And so I had to look at a bunch of new sales from back then to figure out how much it would have cost to build the house as of that date. And it was really interesting. It was really interesting to see the appreciation that we've seen in Nashville from then until now. And another super interesting little factoid from this appraisal was one of these listings in a fairly homogeneous neighborhood had a luxury in-ground pool, a gunite pool, and which, if you're familiar with pools, is maybe the most expensive type of pool that you can get. They range in price today from $250,000 to $1 million for a gunite pool, I think. So in the course of doing this appraisal, I noticed from back then, as of this date about 20 years ago, a gun I pulled, the extra value that you'd have gotten out of that pool was about $15,000 is what I would have adjusted for a pool, which I thought was fascinating because they're quite a bit more now. And I hear a lot of agents who've been in the business a while talk about how in-ground pools bring no value, and I think that experience from having been in the business that long is why they have that in their head, because $15,000, even back then, that pool would have been fairly expensive to install. So when you think about it barely bringing any value on resale, that's really interesting, really wild to me, because now it would get so much more, it'd be so much more expensive. Anyway, that's just one of the little interesting discoveries that I ran into in the course of doing that assignment. But your appraiser can do all these things. If you're not familiar with what they might need, just start looking up the appraiser and call them and tell them the situation. We know what we can do. We know what we cannot do. Not every appraiser will be comfortable going and doing specific things. Like we have to consider our own competency. I have quite a bit of experience now doing retrospective appraisals. So, but not every appraiser will. So you need to ask, let them know what the purpose of the appraisal is. That's an important thing we always want to know on the front end. What's it going to be used for? And you just tell them, and they'll start asking you the questions they need to know to determine if they can accept the assignment, and then to give you what you need. If you should know, I want you to know that, like this appraisal that I completed today, if you need a value that is one value as of today and one value as of 20 years ago, you're asking for two appraisals, and you will be charged and expect to pay accordingly. They might not both be the same price, but they might be. That'll be up to your appraiser that you call and how much work they perceive in each one. That appraisal as of 20 years ago, some of the work was already completed as by doing the first assignment as of today, but then there was a lot of other time that had to go into that analysis from so far back in the past. So trust your appraiser to be fair, and then you can negotiate or attempt to negotiate if you want to try to get a little bit off the bulk order. What else? Things like estate settlement in particular can be more expensive, because those assignments will sometimes need to be presented to the IRS, and there will be different definitions of value that the appraiser needs to consider. They don't really change anything all that much, but the IRS does have a lot of different requirements for your appraiser to complete, and different and more requirements all translate into more time completing the assignment, and more time translates to higher fees. So be aware of that. In the context of a divorce case, if your appraiser may need to lay out additional fees in case they're called to testify. There may be a base fee for going to testify, like a minimum number of hours they perceive as being required for that, and then they'll put on an hourly fee for the expert testimony. So you could maybe advise your client to be prepared for that. These things are expensive. Divorce is expensive. Settling estates, these things get expensive. So you can sort of help the appraiser and help your client by setting proper expectations on the front end for all these things. And what else? I think that's it. Most of the rest of it still has the same. There's still going to be a site visit, more than likely. There's still going to be professional measurements. Your client, depending on what if they want the house to appear in the best light because that's advantageous to them, then they'll want to have the place cleaned up just like they would for a buyer. If it doesn't matter, then they can skip it. So you can help them, and sort of foster your own relationship with maybe a repeat client by being able to advise them and set the proper expectations for whatever service you're connecting them to. And we would be happy to help if you feel like connecting them to us is the right answer. So I hope that's all helpful. You can find us at truepointappraisals.com if we can be of service on something like that. If you run into requests for assistance that you don't really know how to handle, feel free to just reach out and shoot me a text or give me a call, and I'll help you sort it out. May not be in an area that we go to. I can help you find somebody. Happy to do that for you. And as always, I appreciate you watching. I hope you got a little something out of that. And I will catch you next week.